Introducing the Enterprise Circus by PlaySecure. Are you a SAS juggler?
I like that fun aspect.
What about a tightrope walking architect?
Let's try something different.
Is it time we accept engineers have a craft akin to being acrobats?
Now, putting your head in the middle of a fiery ring, which I mean amuses me, I don't know about everybody else, might not be the way to go, but it does set the tone.
And so as a ringmaster, you want the jugglers, you want the trapeze artists, you want everybody else to look amazing. And when you have an amazing show and it's well executed, you stand back and allow your people to be forward and to take that bow.
The same thing is true when you've got somebody demonstrating a trick on the flying trapeze, is if you choose a very scared student, they're there to go first, they're going to set the tone and everyone will be scared.
Is it a good analogy?
I mean, we're using this slightly stretchy metaphor of the circus to talk about us as professionals. But the people who have fun at the circus are not the professionals.
Well, it sounds like if it's a small to medium business, it's going to be the CISO. But Janai brought up a good point, which is if you're a large organization, it's most likely going to be the BISO, because the person who is responsible and owns the circus for cybersecurity would be the CISO.
At the moment, what we're seeing is that there is a realization that there may have been a little bit too much hands-off in terms of technical understanding within decision makers. And I think it's right that decision makers don't need to have a kind of a practitioner's level of understanding, but that shared level of communication is really important. And therefore, I think that's where we're seeing the greatest drive, particularly within senior decision makers, is understanding what is that kind of level of technical understanding and knowledge that we need to have in order to be able to be effective in our roles.
As an architect, it's slowly killing you, right? At least for me, it is. To release the control bit by bit.
That crosses over to what a CISO does, as in you're just sort of setting the pace and setting the tone rather than that kind of micromanagement, must know everything that goes on, must be in every meeting kind of CISO.
Magic Box comes in many guises. What types of Magic Box are we talking about?
Well, yeah, there's obviously different types of magic boxes, and it's always the same story. It's a foolproof solution. It's either something on the endpoint preventing you from getting infected with malware, or on your network preventing anything being downloaded or uploaded. Or I mean, I've seen some interesting approaches. I've also seen some pretty decent stuff.
I have the idea to go in your position in the circus, right? Someday. To be organizer, to be someone who is responsible for everything and see the bigger scope, right? But still on this lower level.
I feel security it's usually built in. It should be built in, not really. It's part of the process. Yeah, that's what I should say. It's part of the process.
I think there's lots of things, and in some ways it's a game in itself. How do we map it to what we know about the real world, and how do we use it as a medium for communicating between us? Any one of those roles you've outlined are probably more fluid than we would like, in the same way that meanings are more fluid.
I have to see what would that be? What would the police officer be in the circus? You know, is that is it the ringmaster?
When you start to see people who stagnate in their careers, oftentimes they're not very politically savvy. And so political savviness skills, strong communication skills, those are all things that you have to invest in to move into that ringmaster position. And, have a little
if you're
bit
not
of
doing
flair.
red teaming, let your pen testers start doing some red teaming, doing some other things, or cross-train people to work in different areas. And also make sure when you got your entry-level people that come in there, make sure that you're giving them decent bumps in pay once they reach certain skills. Because what I've seen in the industry a lot, because being a former college professor, I've seen a lot of people get entry-level jobs. They're with the company 2 or 3 years, and they're only getting 3% raises. And so their counterparts are somewhere else making, twice as much money.
Why are we doing a circus and not an orchestra?
And it's always interesting to compare the conductor actually runs the orchestra and the pace of the orchestra. Whereas, I don't know, and like you're doing today as the ringmaster, you appear in charge, and also you're deciding the timing.
And my friends told me I should be a wrestler. So I went and pro wrestled for a while. And during that time, I even wrestled a bear. So really, I haven't had experience actually taming lions, but I have wrestled bears before.
I think there is, because what we need to learn and how we learn has changed. We're no longer in school. We don't have an 8:30 a.m. start and a 6:30, not 6:30, but open at 3:30 p.m. end, and lunch in between. We're relatively, there's no syllabus that we can follow.
You can be automated, no problem. Is there a problem with that approach?
Yeah, so I think that the large issue that everyone thinks that, and everyone being these companies, right, that claim to have the magic solve, is that there's this human element to every job that you just simply cannot automate. So, a great example is the auto completion software that, has been essentially creates sentences, right? And it can create a sentence that's grammatically correct, but whenever a person reads it, you can kind of tell that it's off, right? So it's the same way with analysis, especially relating to security and security incidents. You can analyze just so much and automate so much, but until a person understands how that analysis and how those outcomes affect business goals, there's no way for computers or for this magic solve to replace a person in that job.
I don't know, I think that there certainly is some level of a place for a hierarchy when it comes to escalating. You have an issue, but I think as we've all talked about where people are coming through from more of a technical background, in the future a lot of people will have better communication, because that seems to be the thing that a lot of people talk about. We're so used to all the social media, and everyone's a lot more connected now. So as a result of that, I think those skills that are learned in these generations will push forward it'll have to happen, because that's what everyone has grown up with.
I also think that most CISOs need to be technical. I mean, I know CISOs that are very technical. I'm in the manufacturing industry, and I know CISOs that have no idea what's on their OT platforms.
Do you think that management books don't know what to do with the technically excellent professional?
So I think the type of management you're describing there is what I might call incredibly bad management that is going to poison and destroy your company. Because it is just plain wrong. It's not measurement towards being a CISO, measurement towards becoming more senior is not the way you want to do it. What you should be looking at is what is the value, what is the output, what sort of outcomes is someone achieving, rather than are they on a particular predetermined path. And the whole thing about becoming a CISO, I think it's self-evident. I've got no interest in being a CISO for anyone. I don't want to be a CISO. It's not my path. But I do work at that level. I do work with CISOs. I do different bits and pieces. I would also say I'm probably now unmanageable.
Like, security is everyone's responsibility. It's not, if you're all in the circus, if you're the performers, the attendees also need to do something. They need to volunteer sometimes in the acts, and those could be the security champions that we have.
In a weird way, sometimes having insecure systems actually gives you the early warning signs, right? Creating systems that are easy to abuse also measures the pulse.
Especially in security, because we don't have enough time. Most of us are behind our work. We're constantly having to patch things or push for things to be patched. But on top of that, we don't even have time to plan or prep or anything because we're overwhelmed. We don't have enough people on our team. And the reason for that could be because there's gatekeeping happening and they're not able to get a role. Or it could be a different situation, which is that you can't get more funds from your C-level and board so you can hire more folks for your security team. And then also, if your people are burned out on your team, their performance level is like half of what they're capable of doing.
They manage risk. You're talking about a lot of dangerous things that are happening in a circus. In fact, this isn't so much of a circus, but I read an article today where one filmmaker said, I will never work with live animals and actors together again because it was so dangerous.
And I guess I could have had something circus strongman related because I do compete in powerlifting and lift heavy things. But yeah, this is one of the crazy things I did way back then. I wrestled a bear, and there's a picture from one of my wrestling matches. So I started as a pro wrestler, needed a more stable career. I was wrestling once a week and then working as a bouncer in a nightclub the few other days of the week to make enough money to live off of. So I went to trade school and learned CAD drafting. And so I spent a few years as a CAD drafter. And from my CAD drafting career, I found out that I had more of a knack for the IT side of things. I learned about sysadmin work. A lot of times in our organizations that I worked for, the first few companies I worked for in my professional career, especially as a drafter, we didn't have dedicated IT staff. So I would figure out how to fix a lot of the things. And I taught myself how to build computers, and I took a Novell NetWare certification course and then got my first job as a sysadmin. During my sysadmin years, I learned about information security, and I moved into InfoSec doing network security. Did that for about a year and a half, moved into application security, and application security is where I learned about pen testing.
It's a big part that you can take in IT, because you can stay on call in some cases, but when you stay on call every day because you are the master, could be in your company, that is the hard way, because you generally burn out for exactly the people kick for the jobs. Could be generate more jobs, could be less pay for the new job, but it's more respect for the time, for the time free with your family.
Tshape doesn't mean that you're not a specialist. It just means you got a lot more broad knowledge. You understand why you're doing, which is a great motivator, isn't it? Because if I said, do this piece of work, and I didn't say, this piece of work is going to save the lives of millions of children, or right? Which one is more motivational? If I paint the picture, and equally, if you have the T-shaped nature. So Masa, what then makes a T-shaped engineer? We know what are the additional things, apart from, of course, joining the PlaySecure conference and everything, but it was very T-shaped. But what is it that you're interested in at the moment, just generally to be a better engineer?
Right now I'm interested in so many things. Like you mentioned, the T-shape engineer. There are so many skills involved, so many things to know. We see, let's just use the analogy of the acrobat, engineer like an acrobat juggling. Now, there are so many things involved to that, like he has to balance so many things. So I believe balancing of various skills, that's be it maybe on the cloud platform and DevOps and maybe system engineering, network security, all of those, that's all together, that's what makes the engineer.
And we had a couple of organizations, one in particular, that came in with a magic box solution, and it was looking at the health of our organization outside of our knowledge, so where we'd appeared in breaches, all that kind of thing, anything upstream of a potential attack, that they would provide the analysis and total protection against it. And it turned out, after we did more digging and pushing, that it was exactly what you described there. It was a subcontinental based team of people that spent their hours and days just on the dark web looking for information about our organization. There was no automation behind it. There was no magic behind it. It was a farm of people just working, probably paid peanuts, very little money, in probably rubbish conditions to work, but it wasn't magic.
What do you think of the analogy?
I love it.
and I think it's particularly very relevant to security, right? Anyone that has ever led a security audit, we're just playing, we're doing a play, right? People get prepared, the motions you need to do, the things you need to say, right? It's a performance.
I think maybe we could use the hand slap in terms of something like CISO as a team, where people are not necessarily bonded, but they're just high-fiving each other in midair. Is that a good analogy, Dida?
Maybe, but it's not common practice. It's like up to the CISO, or it's up to the person to define how they're synchronizing their teams. So I don't think we've reached like an industry best practice of how we keep synchronizing between teams.
But to be honest with you, it needs to be seen on an individual level, because some people have an affinity for some special topic and are very good in that, and have a broad understanding of other topics, and that could be perfectly fine for where they are. But actually, I think if you are just a specialist in one thing and you do that excellent and really, really well, then you might not have all the surrounding knowledge, all the tidbits to understand your processes as the company as a whole.
Games and gaming is a safe to fail environment, whereas in work people tend not to have that. You kind of you learn through hopefully not failing in front of your colleagues, and you're making a new impression, so you don't want to fail in front of your colleagues. So people try less things, learn more slowly because they can't be more experimental, they can't play. There's all sorts of ideas of the way we treat people in work and how ineffective it is compared to more dedicated environments, i.e. if you're a trapeze artist.
Thank you to all our circus acts at the Enterprise Circus. On behalf of PlaySecure, I look forward to welcoming you to our next event in the new year. PlaySecure out for now.